Welcome to the podcast where relationships, confidence, and determination all converge into an amazing, heartfelt experience. This is Speaking from the Heart.
Welcome back to episode number 154 of Speaking from the Heart. Today we have Katie Santoro, and Katie is a burnout survivor on a mission to help others avoid the same by offering virtual assistance to business owners and busy professionals, while simultaneously creating employment for individuals needing flexibility. In 2019, Katie left her corporate job in the insurance industry to run her first business, a yoga studio, after experiencing burnout. When she closed her yoga studio during the pandemic, she began considering a return to corporate life. Knowing she couldn't return without risking another burnout, she used her experiences in the legal and insurance industry with running a small business and began assisting clients as a freelancer. As she grew, she recruited from her network of friends who were leaving the workforce due to the struggles of childcare during the pandemic, and River City Virtual Assistance was born. The company is dedicated to providing assistance to clients and is committed to providing meaningful employment to parents and caretakers within the United States. I love this episode for many, many reasons. It's given me even new hope on the fact that the era of virtual assistance is here to stay. But Katie's story is one of the many stories that we often hear, even post-COVID world, about how the skills, sometimes that were left behind, have been transferred. They have been accumulating into what ultimately becomes opportunities for others to become the best versions of who they are. I love that she even involves herself today with talking about her employment, why that was such a big catalyst to starting this conversation, to starting this business that she has now, and how she helps so many people, regardless of what they might have as businesses, and managing the expectations that they have to have in order to have those demands be met at the times that are needed. I think you will find that Katie's story about burnout is quite different from other stories, and how she's turned that burnout into purpose, and how she's been able to help so many find their purpose as well. But with that, let's go to the episode. All right, we're here with Katie Santoro. Katie, thanks for sharing your heart with us today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I am so glad that you are here too. And I feel like we have a lot to cover today, and we have a lot in common from what I read to my audience about you. So, Katie, I did let them know a little bit about your background, but I have to start from the roots, the origin story of what you started. Obviously, you started a business after a lot of events happened in your life, and I find that we have that similarity in our life. So, I have to follow this. This is like an interesting trail for me. You did insurance as a first business, then you did a yoga studio, and then after that, it was the pandemic, and then you started the current business. Walk us through why the different jobs and what led to the burnout that you experienced.
There's a lot of overlap in all of those things. So my career was in the legal and insurance worlds. My last job was working in insurance claim. And I did that for a little over 5 years. And a couple of years into it, I felt like I needed more in life, and I opened a yoga studio. So the yoga studio and the career happened at the same time. They coincided. And that's what led to the burnout. In 2019, I finally got to the point where I knew that I could not stay in my career if I wanted to live the life that I wanted to live. And I left. I left my job. I was running the yoga studio. That was my full-time gig, if you will. Actually, my full-time gig at that time was healing from burnout because I had got to the point where it was affecting every part of my life. So the yoga studio was going on. I went to Costa Rica to get some more training in yoga. Also, part of my healing journey really helped me heal energetically. While I was there, the borders shut down. I was there in March of 2020. And yeah, I came home. I figured out how to run a yoga studio online. Ran it online for a couple of months. And then originally, what was it? We were going to close down for 2 weeks, right? And then it was 7 weeks. And it just kind of kept on going on and on. And I was teaching classes out of my office on Zoom. And I still had bills to pay for the physical studio that I had. We had a personal guaranteed lease, which was really scary for me. And I was going to go back to work. I could go back to my old job. I could find another job. I have tons of experience. I have licenses and certifications. I could do whatever I needed to do. And my now husband talked me out of it. And he was right. He said, you were a monster. You can't go back. And he's so right. If I had gone back, it would have been extremely detrimental to my emotional and mental well-being. So I started freelancing as an administrative assistant, skills I had, things that I could work with. And the business has really just grown from there. First, I found a lot of clients that needed what I could give, which was being reliable, being consistent, knowing how to do the admin work. I'm very curious. I always like to figure out how to get things done. I'm a natural problem solver. And then I started realizing that there was a lot of women in my same situation who had left work or were not returning to work because of COVID. And for a lot of them, it was childcare, taking care of their children. And that's kind of how we grew. I started recruiting people, women from my network that wanted to work, but wanted to work virtually and matching them with clients that I had. I had more clients than I could handle who needed good, strong assistance.
Finding that good assistant or finding someone that has the skill sets that you have, I have to say, first off, there was a lot that you shared with just the different fields that you've been in, because for many people to be able to take that in one big package and be like, this is what I can offer you, that takes some great creativity and opportunity. And you capitalized on something that for many years now, a lot of people were like, I don't know how this would work. But the pandemic kind of pushed everybody to think outside the box. Now, I have to ask you this because you said something that is, for many listeners, they probably never really heard this other side of what COVID is all about. So you were in Costa Rica and you were teaching yoga virtually. Is that what you were doing?
No, I was in Costa Rica taking a training. I was
Ah,
getting
okay.
my 500-hour yoga certification. And when I got back, I actually started before I got back because we knew what was going on. It was very weird. I remember calling my husband and being like, what is going on at home? Because here we're like in this little bubble, right? We're in this yoga retreat. You're with 27 other people. Everybody's holding hands and hugging. And it's just like this little yoga bubble. And I was like, what in the world is going on at home? And he was like, well, things are starting to shut down. People are freaking out. There's no toilet paper, all of those things. So I started connecting with my students virtually at that point. I sent an email out to everybody. I said, I'm in Costa Rica. I'd love to have a class just virtually on Zoom to connect with you all. And then the next day, the school that I was at closed. They basically said, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. The borders are closing. You got to go. So I came home and immediately started teaching yoga. Everything was closed by the time I got home and immediately started teaching online.
Phew. Okay. You had me nervous there for a second. Like, oh, well, I was stuck in Costa Rica for a few months and I
No,
almost
no,
thought that maybe you had to work through that. But even then,
no.
that's still a challenge. Yeah.
There were people that stayed, and it was interesting because in a yoga training, you're with people who are 18 to 60 across the gamut. And there were some people that decided to stay because they were like, well, the borders are closing, but that doesn't mean that my country won't let me back in. I'm like, they will let you back in, but are you going to be able to get a flight home? So for me, I was like, I'm going home. I'm getting this flight. I'm getting home as soon as I can to be where I need to be. But again, at that time, we just thought we were going to be closed out for 2 weeks.
That's very smart that you were thinking like, maybe I should get out of here and not be trapped here. So that was a smart move on your part because I remember that I took a trip to Paris about 2 months before and there were some rumblings of it because in January 2020, it was being talked about in the world stage, but it wasn't anything that really hit home. But I was thinking, man, if this would have happened to me when I was taking this trip to Paris, when I was overseas, I wonder what the logistical nightmare would have been. I would have been freaking out.
There,
I would
there,
have needed
there
to hire a virtual assistant.
There was a group of people in the yoga community in the city that I'm from. They were in Peru doing a training and they couldn't get back and they had to charter a private plane and there was a big GoFundMe to get them home. Just because the borders are open doesn't mean that people have to fly you back. So the airline shut down. Anyways.
No, it's a very fascinating aspect of it. So here's another question I have before we dive into your business, because I think this might have set some of the stage for what you ultimately started. Do you feel that learning to adjust with the different technologies that you had to utilize, especially with yoga and things like that, do you think that was the precursor to helping you start your business that you now run?
Absolutely. When I first opened the yoga studio, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So I hired a business coach. Everyone should at some point work with a business coach. I also worked with a coach when I started this business. But the coaching program that I did for the yoga studio was very technical literacy. So like working on your website, setting up your CRM, doing your email automations, like all of that kind of digital literacy of digital marketing. That helped me. I don't know if I would have been able to start the business I have now without that foundation. I use so much of it, although it's a completely different industry, a completely different business. That was a solid foundation for me, just like with digital marketing that allowed me to make this switch. And being a virtual assistant, it was something that had sat in my mind for a while. I remember when I was at the insurance company, I had a friend, we're still very close friends, and we have worked at other places before together. And I remember we sat next to each other. We had these low cubicles. And I remember popping over it one day and being like, let's just quit. Let's just leave. And like, we could like freelance and do this stuff for somebody else. Let's just leave. There was another day where I tried to convince her to quit our jobs and start a mimosa cart. I thought that was a great idea too. Very early in my burnout, I was already starting to spiral, but it's an idea I'd already always had, but I didn't know how to do it. And it kind of like that convergence of learning the digital marketing, opening my first business as the yoga studio, getting the confidence, and then the world shutting down and me having to figure it out. I reached into my toolbox and I pulled out what I had and I just rolled with it. That same friend, we always joke about. One time I said, I was like, you can quit. You've got skills. We don't know what they are, but you've got them. And that's like, I kind of always think about that in how I started this business. I was like, I have skills. I don't know what I have, but I've got them. Let's figure it out.
Well, this leads into maybe one of my last questions before we dive into business, because it has some curiosity rolling in my mind. But you have all these skill sets. What was the one thing that you felt you had to stretch yourself in doing when you started out? Meaning, was there a particular skill that you didn't feel as good about, but maybe you needed to learn a little bit? Because you mentioned something about having a business coach. I have to say, I thank Gary. Gary's the one that really helped me with getting started with my business and setting some of the foundations, like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Kind of helping me out with some of those things. So I'm wondering if there's something that helped stretch you to get to that point where you were like, I'm ready to do this.
My husband, we weren't married then. We're married now. We probably would have never gotten married had I not left my career and gone on this path, because it was a completely different person and it wasn't the nicest person. But I remember one night we were talking about this new client that I had just started working with, and they worked on a program, Kajabi. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's a learning management system. And I didn't know how to do it. And I was afraid to take on this new client. And we kind of talked it through, and it's like, I think I can figure it out, but I might mess it up. And how do I even market myself as someone who can do something if I don't know how to do it? And he was like, eventually you're just going to have to take on assignments that you don't know how to do, and you're going to have to figure it out. And he was so right. And I still do that. I don't do client work anymore, but in my own business, I say, this is something we want to do. I don't know how to do it. Let's figure it out. So just constantly pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, which we all talk about that, but it's actually making yourself do things you don't think you can do because you really can do them.
Ah, that's the old adage that I keep saying to myself too, is that I need to just do it and just see what happens. And it's gotten me to where I'm at now too. I'm sure you have many stories just like what I can think of relating to that as well. I think if anything, I know that we hear a lot about corporate America, kind of like, oh yeah, they're inventing all these new things. It's small business that is
Mhm.
really diving into those ideas. So kudos to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. And the flip side of that is being really aware of where I'm pushing myself too hard, because that's what got me into burnout, is my own expectations of myself, having too high of expectations and constantly feeling like I'm not able to meet them. So even now with the business, I'll say, I want to do these things. And then I look at what I can actually handle right now with everything else on my plate. And there are things that I'll say, look, now's not the time to learn this new skill or do this new thing, because my focus needs to be elsewhere. And I don't need to set myself up for failure.
Absolutely. And it's about managing those expectations of what you
Mhm.
can and cannot do, which that leads into a perfect segue about your business. Let's dive into it, because you run River City Virtual Assistants. First off, what's the River City? Is that based on some sort of place that you lived? Can you tell us a little bit about the business name? I find that very unique.
Yes and no. So River City is, I'm in Richmond, Virginia, and it's considered River City. But there is a couple of plays on that word. So River City virtual assistants. So it's River City VAs, and I'm in Virginia, so it can also be RC VA. And then the other one is I knew that there's lots of cities in the United States that call themselves River City. So like San Antonio, Texas, also in River City. So I was like, this will give us enough ambiguity to have that virtual aspect.
That is so cute. I love that because that does leave a lot of interpretation and variety that you can dive into. Absolutely. Tell us, what do you call a virtual assistant? Because I will set this out, and this is for my listeners too. I've heard this all the time of, well, if you hire me as a virtual assistant, this is what I can do for you. If you hire me, this other person, as a virtual assistant, this is the things that I can do, but I can't do. So tell us what you consider what a virtual assistant is in today's environment and what you do to fill that gap.
In the very clean sense of it is we provide executives, admin support, marketing support, operational support to business owners, small businesses, solopreneurs, and executives. That's very broad though, right? So people always ask, well, what do you do? And the answer is everything. The thing that we do differently at River City Virtual Assistants is we recognize that one virtual assistant cannot know everything they need to know to work for a client. If you're working with a couple different clients, those clients are going to have different needs. One might be on HubSpot, one might be on Copper, one might be on Squarespace, one might be on WordPress. So there's all these different things that you're having to kind of constantly pivot. So the way that we've worked around that is we've created kind of like a communal learning system. Everybody who comes to work with us goes through a 3-month mentorship. They meet with their mentor once a week. They talk about the different things they need to learn. That mentor helps them. And then if it's outside the mentor's skill set, you've got 20 other people on the team. So the mentor will say, hey, let's check out who's working on what program. We've got like a spreadsheet of what everybody works on. I'm going to connect you with this person. They can train you on how to do whatever it is that's outside of your skill set. Everybody says you need to niche down, right? The riches are in the niches. You have to have this one thing that you work on. And I believe that a good assistant needs to be more of a generalist. They need to have the support system to learn the things that they need to learn and the resources to learn those things, but they need to be able to go outside of just their little niche. We can find somebody who really specializes in WordPress, right? We have people on our team who are like, I love WordPress. I love working on it, or I love working on Kajabi, but they're going to need to do more than that to be your assistant. So we train them on all the different things. Well-rounded.
I personally use Wix for my website. So you got anybody with Wix on your team?
I have to check our tech stack. I've never worked on Wix, but I'm sure someone on our team has.
Awesome. So that tells me, though, that you're very resourceful. And that is something I especially think as a virtual assistant, you have to be able to dive into a number of different things. When you look at some of the people that say, yeah, I offer virtual assistant responsibilities and duties, what do you say distinguishes yourself from some of those other companies?
What distinguishes River City Virtual Assistants from some of the other companies and our competitors, something that we do very differently is we employ everybody on our team. We do that for multiple reasons. One is if you contract somebody, and we hire a lot of parents and caretakers who are at home. So if you're contracting someone, you're putting the entire tax burden on them. They're having to pay the 25% tax burden of self-employment, which we didn't feel was right in working with parents. They're working to get some extra income. We don't need to put an additional burden on them. So that was important to us to help pick up some of that burden. That keeps them with us for longer, right? So we offer employment, we offer health benefits, we offer PTO, we offer training, we offer mentorship. And then we offer just kind of that full container of employment, right? We have coffee breaks together and they have an entire team that they can talk to. They can call me at any time. They can hop into the group chat at any time and get help. I really think that sets us apart. There's some that have been with me since I was freelancing in 2020. They've been with me since the very beginning. And then we don't have a lot of turnover. And that's great for our clients because you don't want somebody who's going to work with you for 6 months and then go on to the next job. Because once you build that relationship, there's so much value behind the relationship between an assistant and a client You don't want them to just leave because you lose so much value when they leave.
Especially in a setting like that, I have to say, it makes such a big difference to know that you can trust those people, especially if they are going through similar types of life situations. So, like you were saying about parents and caregivers, are mostly a lot of people that come to work for you. With what you said, I think it's so interesting that you say that you hire them because nowadays I'm always hearing about the gig economy. So being able to be contracted and not have that burden, because you're right, they didn't have to have the taxes that they would normally pay, whether that's employment or other things. They would have to do that all by themselves. Why give them that much value, Katie? I mean, you could be like everybody else and say, yeah, you could just be contracted. And I know you explained a little bit about, well, that helps with retention and other things, but do you feel that you create a culture at River City Virtual Assistants as a result of that? Do you feel like there's a lot more opportunity to buy in and give ideas and input? Do you feel like you create that kind of culture because of that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, and this is just my personal feeling, everybody is welcome to do whatever they want to do in their business and run it however they want. But I think that the gig economy takes advantage of parents and caretakers, right? Being like, oh, well, you could DoorDash and make extra money for your family. But then they don't get the benefits of working for a company. And I think that that's really important. Women will stay in jobs and relationships for longer than they need to because they're afraid to go without health insurance. And that was me. I didn't want to leave my career because I didn't know what it would be like to not have health insurance. And I didn't know if I could afford it on my own. And I wasn't married. I stayed in a situation that was toxic and so bad for my mental health because I didn't want to have something as simple as health insurance. Originally, people were contracted on our team. And I knew that I did not want to be that type of business. I knew that I wanted to employ. I knew that I wanted to offer benefits of employment to my team members. For me, it's the thing to do. It goes along with our values. It goes along with our mission. And I do think it helps culture, right? Our team members know that we employ them, that they work for us and they can come to us and talk to us about things and learn from us. They're not just a one-off. One of the worst things you can say to somebody is you're replaceable. And we don't want them to feel that way at all because they're not.
I feel that we often forget about the fact that we shouldn't think of ourselves as replaceable because we all bring something and we contribute to the table. And I think that's even part of the interview process, right? You interviewing someone to see if they are a good fit for not just what you're providing for the job description, but for the culture as a whole. What would you say is an ideal person that would want to be a virtual assistant? Is there a certain set of skills? Now, you're bringing something unique in which you have a well-roundedness as somebody that's founded it and also works with a variety of different clients now. But what if somebody is interested in maybe starting a gig like this and maybe working for you? What would you say would be somebody that is successful in this environment?
One of the biggest things we look for is curiosity. Curiosity, what do you do with your curiosity, right? Are you asking questions and then figuring out the answers to it? Are you teaching yourself things? Are you taking classes for fun? We like to ask people in the application process, tell us something that you taught yourself and how did you teach yourself to do it? And people are like, oh, well, I took a class on 3D printing and now I 3D print earrings and sell them on Etsy. And I set up my Etsy page and like all these little things that we do just kind of for fun. How does that translate into your work? There is no, that I'm aware of, there's no accredited certification for a virtual assistant. Sure, there's plenty of programs you can take, there's courses you can take, but as long as you have that aptitude to learn something new and that desire to learn something new, I think you're going to be pretty good at it. I would say this isn't rocket science. We're not doing rocket science. We're doing administrative assistance, which some of it can be pretty intense and be like pretty technical, but some of it is just sorting somebody's emails and anybody can learn how to do it, really.
Oh, I have a full inbox, Katie. Please, I'm going to hire you to take care of that for me.
We will talk after this and I will give you some tips and tricks on how to easily sort your email inbox. I freak out when mine gets above 50. So I have some tips and tricks for you.
I have to ask you this. I always enjoy asking this question, especially those that are in the service industry and they have clientele. So, without having to mention their name, because I respect the confidentiality of everybody in terms of this sort of environment, what would you say was the most interesting client that you've had in terms of helping them with your services? Meaning, was there something unique about it that you were trying to navigate with them with a variety of different things that you offer? Maybe there was some sort of company that was maybe out of the blue that you never heard of before that was like, oh, that's really interesting. Or maybe it could be just as generic as, yeah, I helped my best friend. Either way, what would you say is the most memorable client you've worked with?
I have a lot of them.
That's always the best thing to have a lot of
Yeah.
them and you're trying to choose one.
Yeah. So one of my very, very first clients, and he's still with us. I no longer work with him because I don't do client work anymore. But one of our first clients, he owns a business and they had a growth plan. And because of COVID, their growth plan just blew up. They hit their growth plan within the first 3 months of COVID and then it kept on going because the world was kind of crazy then. And he's my age, but I always felt like he was like much more older and wiser than me. And he just took the time every week to meet with me and ask me, what do you need? How can I help you succeed in this role? And I learned so much from him. He was the CFO. So I learned a lot of like businessy things from him. And we're still in touch. Like I said, he's still one of our clients. I love it when I work with people who have done it before me and they're interested in what my business is doing and they're interested in helping and giving their advice and their mentorship. It's very much like a two-way street, right? I can figure out how to find a contractor to change your electricity in your house right now, but you can also teach me how to do something. So you learn from all of your clients in some way. And sometimes just through the problem solving process of helping them solve problems, you learn. I have so many clients that I just think so fondly of. It was really hard for me when I decided to stop doing client work. It was really, really hard for me to step away from it because I just like the work.
Yeah. And I know of people that have to step away because they have the bigger vision that they're working on with it. And they have to support some of the people that they're going to trust to be able to do the work and carry that forward. Doesn't mean that you don't touch base with them or anything by all means, but you always have that relationship, which I love that you foster. That's something that I even work with my clients on. It's about having that relationship with someone, especially in a coaching relationship. That is really important if you're ever going to make progress. But it is very, very important with what you said that we're able to foster that.
Yeah.
Katie, we're almost at the end of our time. And I really have this one last question for you because we led this conversation really starting from the fact that you experienced burnout. Do you feel a sense of burnout doing this sort of job now? And if so, why? Or if not, why? And when you explain that answer, let us know why that is the case. Meaning, what propels you to not feel burned out? Or if you do feel burned out and you got to switch careers, please just tell us right now what that's going to be.
I'm not going to switch careers. I love what I do. So I think that, at least for me and my experience, after experiencing burnout and healing from burnout, I feel like those pathways are open in my brain. The overachieving feeling is always going to be there. I am always going to struggle with not feeling like I'm doing enough. Could I burn out in this role? 100% yes. Do I have moments where I feel like I'm tipping? Yes. Today was a moment. I had a moment today where one of the things that starts to show me that I'm getting overstressed out and I need to step back is when I lose my ability to be kind. And it's like the first thing that goes when I get tired. And I know that about myself. So I have a business partner. I called my business partner and said, I'm at the end of my bandwidth. I need you to help me with this. And she's like, cool, I'm on it. I'll take care of it. So just being able to recognize that I can burn out at any moment. You can burn out doing things you love. People do it all the time. But being able to recognize when you're starting to go down that slope and asking for the help that you need. So with business owners, and we work with so many business owners who are in a similar position, you can burn yourself out doing what you love. Our goal is to make sure you don't. You can ask for help. There's someone here to help take the burden, to take some of the mental load off of you, whether that be with your business or maybe you need your virtual assistant to help you with some things going on in your personal life, like running a household and raising children and being a spouse. All those things are really hard. Could I burn out? Yes. Am I going to? I don't think so. I think I've put good boundaries in place.
Boundaries. That is something that is so important because I also, and we were talking about this before the show, about how that has been a big deal for even me. And we kind of associate with that. I think it's so true. And I also find myself getting a little angry sometimes too. And I have to push it away and walk away and come back. And that's always a great way and technique, even if you don't have somebody else, just to step away from it too. I think all of those are great ideas in itself. And you have yoga to always lean back on. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah. One of our values is being self-reflective. It's very important for us and our team members to understand when we're getting angry about something or when we're getting frustrated about something. Why are we getting frustrated and how can we ask for help and kind of step back from it? So
Yeah,
very important.
big step backwards. Yes, in order to be able to take a big leap forwards. That's
Yeah.
always the key. Katie, thanks so much for this. I really enjoyed our conversation. I want to give you the last few minutes here. I'm sure people are interested, especially some of my business owners. Maybe they are excited to work with you and your team at River City Virtual Assistants. Maybe you can share a little bit of information on how they can get in contact with that, how they can get in contact with you if they're interested in talking more about what you've shared today. Even if they have interest in the services, maybe you can run through some of them, which we haven't really overall talked about. I know you have a variety of different things, but I'm going to give you the last few minutes to do all of that.
Yeah, sure. We have a website, rivercity-va.com. If you go there, we have a services list. You can find out about our upcoming webinars. Every month, we do a different webinar, and we do them on things such as learning to delegate, learning to set boundaries, how to use AI in your marketing, things like that. So things that we're doing, and we do a little webinar on that every month, and it's free. We also have a newsletter that you can sign up for, which is some of that same information. We call it the Virtual Assist. So we're here to lend a little hand. It's navigating the waters of entrepreneurship and life. You can follow me on LinkedIn at Katie Santoro. And we also have a River City Virtual Assistants business page where you can find a lot of information. We take our blogs and we break them down into smaller information for our business page. And then you can just email me, Katie and it's Katie at rivercity-va.com. Like I said earlier, I'm a problem solver. I love to talk through business problems, how to solve them, different programs that can be used, things like that. So I'm always willing to have a call about how you might solve your problem, whether or not we are a fit for you or not, which we probably are because we have lots of diverse skills. But whether or not we're a fit for you, I'm happy to chat through things at any time.
Love all of that. I find that what makes the backbone, and which is why there's a day even named after these sort of people, Administrative Professionals Day. I always love it because if it wasn't for people like you, and I know you do so much more than that, don't get me wrong, but I think that that is so important for us to run with the races of life, business, whatever that is that we're trying to achieve. I love the fact, though, too, that you took all these career aspirations and you dived them into this business that is a fully functional service where you can go and get whatever you need. I love that. And if you don't have that service, you train, you care about your employees. I love that. Those are all great things that I think we sometimes overlook. And yet, in today's day and age, that's what causes a lot of the burnout, too, is being overlooked. And I appreciate you flipping the script and doing that at River City Virtual Assistants. But for all those reasons, Katie, thanks a lot for being on Speaking from the Heart today. I really enjoyed our conversation. It was a privilege to talk to you.
Babe, thank you so much for having me.
I want to thank Katie so much for allowing me to share her story to the world. And I want to thank her so much for being on the show, for allowing me to understand a little bit more of how freelancing works, but more importantly, how it connects to the broader conversation that we need to have about focusing on our purpose. I think it's really important to even understand that when we have all these things that are going on in our businesses and our lives, we need that help. I'm a strong advocate, even myself, on finding that niche that we really want to learn and grow in, giving everybody else the things that we don't want to do, and allowing ourselves to develop our craft. Katie did exactly that in a different kind of way. Her story really exemplifies how many people, even post-COVID, have been trying to challenge the status quo, find their purpose in this world, and find it in a way that can help others be able to escape what has been the traditional 9-to-5 job, usually taking place before pre-pandemic times. We have seen a lot of development in these areas of virtual assistants, and being able to learn a little bit more today gives us a perspective of how you can create this model for yourself by helping others, whether you're far away or even close by. Seeing that this is a play on even some of the more traditional roles of babysitting, even as a kid, or even doing some of the things that are menial in nature. Katie takes this to the professional level, helping those to get their time back. And I love that so much because what we're leaving behind when we're not working on our business, we're not working on ourselves, is that craft, that energy, that purpose that we were designed to do, so it allows us to make the actions that we need to take come alive. Don't consider this as a freelancing opportunity. I think Katie really set the platform as to why virtual assistants are so different from a freelancer. It allows us to develop areas, creating that value for our business or each other. So it allows us to also have opportunities to do the things that we need to do, as I've already mentioned. But the unintended skills that we can learn from these types of jobs might be because of the people that want to invest in them. They want to see that growth become exponential. And I love the fact that even for her story herself, Katie admits in many different parts that she didn't have all the knowledge. She didn't have all the abilities. But her ability to keep moving past that, to create that vision of what she ultimately wanted to see, allowed her to escape from being burned out again. It allowed her to have that flexibility and create the opportunity for so many other people to allow them to surround her, to be able to help others be surrounded with the services that they need to have. But I think that you have to learn from her story is that what kinds of people are you willing to work with? How many others would you be willing to invest in, even if it was your significant other, to create that awareness of expectations that you want to achieve? Let's face it, I'm sure that we've had people in our lives that have come and gone thinking that they were really going to help us get to where we need to be. But the problem with that is that we often find that we have rifts. We have differences of the approach that we need to take. And I've talked about on numerous occasions on this podcast about how we can manage conflict, how we can diffuse it, how we can use what we have going on in our lives to a better advantage. It doesn't mean that we should stop with the conversation and give up, throw up our hands, and say that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing right now. That is not the case here. What kinds of things can we get ourselves involved in should be really the conversation that we have instead. What can we do to make sure that we can work through this problem so that we could get to the solution that we have at hand? It's being aware of what you're expecting and having that conversation of what you're expecting in return. And I think that personalized approach here at River City Virtual Assistants that Katie's business is all about creates that context for so many of her clients and is why it is rapidly growing. It is why people like this want to have that connection, that relationship that we've always got back to, especially in the early parts of this podcast. Right here is a prime example of how that success can come alive. But that connection, those skill sets are so important for us, not just from a generalist perspective, whether that's doing basic accounting work, whether that's doing administrative work, whether that is putting up a social media post, even redoing some research, helping that client get to where that ultimate goal is. Being employed is the number one thing that we all want to do, but we got to do it with our own flexible scheduling. Because in this day and age, with so many different types of opportunities that lie ahead and the income that we can all make, there's no excuse to say that we are flat broke. It just means that we have to put a little bit more effort in some areas over others. It doesn't mean that overnight, magically something will occur, just like those fantasy world social media posts that oftentimes you see. Those people dug deep, got back in their trenches, dug into themselves, trying to figure out what is the niche that they needed to bring to the table, and is exactly why Katie's story, amongst many others, are featured on this podcast. It shows a glimmer of hope, a way in which we're able to create that context, that connection with benefits that allows our environment to thrive. That's why people are jealous. That's why even like you, my listener, might be a little jealous of what she's been able to accomplish. But you heard what she had to go through to get to that point. And that's exactly why I relate to her story so much. I was burned out after I tried to kill myself 4.5 years ago, and it still stuck with me for a long period afterwards. Some of my closest friends, even in posts 6 months after I tried to hurt myself, saw again that I wanted to do it all over, because that level of support, during that COVID period was extremely tough for me. I felt alone. I've had other guests that we've even talked about why that has occurred. It's a mental energy. It's a process in which you have to change your brain patterns and create that aspect of your life that you want to envision. It's not just putting it on paper, but it's empowering yourself to see the same. But yet, even as my one former guest, Mike Van Pelt, even put it, it's about being curious of what you want to work on that will ultimately dictate how you want to best achieve it. It's no coincidence of having Katie to follow right after that. She shares her perspective of that curiosity, and how we can learn from others through that curiosity, how we can build our own businesses through that curiosity, how we were able to have that aha moment come alive in those curiosity moments. But if we can recognize the kindness of helping others, being able to create that consistency for others to achieve what they ultimately want to achieve, you'll see that these kinds of results can happen for you as well. Let's be real. It isn't easy for some of us to easily drop into the bucket of starting a business like this. It takes a lot of hard work. It means that you have to have some tough conversations with the people that are around you, saying to them that it's okay. I know what I'm doing. Give me the faith. And if you have broken those relationships with people, they're going to be even more skeptical of you trying to achieve what you're trying to achieve today. It doesn't mean, though, that you give up. It doesn't mean that you don't stop. It doesn't mean that you pivot into a different kind of direction. It means that you have to find, as I've even said to one of my clients recently, what your sphere of influence is and who your inner circle is that allows you to create those opportunities that you're seeking out. It could be anything like reading books, listening to podcasts. It could be all kinds of healthy activities like dieting, exercise. Anything that helps to fuel you, that influences you, is that sphere of influence. But that inner circle are the people that are going to make sure that hold you accountable to what you're ultimately trying to achieve. Even if it is from a sales perspective, even if it is from your own personal professional development, this story that we're hearing today is the prime example of somebody that changed their sphere of influence, got themselves into the inner circle of people that are willing to help get her to where she needs to be and be able to be successful. I don't know about you, but it means that sometimes we have to break that bubble, pop that balloon, if you will, of the things that we thought were really our manifest destiny, the true vision of what we ultimately wanted to accomplish. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of development. It means that we have to go in areas that oftentimes we're afraid to go into, especially in the world of virtual assistants. But I think that Katie shows her legitimacy, along with her clientele and the people that she hires, of why it's so important to not think of this as a casual freelancer, but somebody that you should take seriously. I can take you seriously too if you're willing to work on those skills, being able to build up what you ultimately have as values right now, if you're willing to have the right mindset to open the potential possibilities in investing in yourself, whether it's monetarily or in the knowledge sense. If you can manage those expectations, if you can play on the words that are allowing you to create that vision of what you're manifesting, and if you're able to work on all kinds of things that allow you to be gainfully employed and manage the expectations that you have in front of you right now, you will create those successes just like Katie did as well. That connection of what we learn from others, what we're truly capable of becoming, and what we're ultimately able to achieve allows us to see things that we ultimately sometimes can't see right in front of us. But even if we recognize it down the road, if we're able to see what we're able to do right now, I think that that is what is more important than anything else. And for all those reasons, that allows you to create the best version of yourself. That allows you to see what you're able to ultimately become. It allows you to see what nobody else might see today, but will ultimately see in the future. Don't wait any longer. Be like Katie. If you want to get control of your life, if you want to ultimately achieve the best version of yourself, this is where the hard work begins. Today. Thanks for listening to episode number 154 of Speaking from the Heart, and I look forward to hearing from your heart very soon.
Thanks for listening. For more information about our podcast and future shows, search for Speaking from the Heart to subscribe and be notified wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit us at www.yourspeakingvoice.biz for more information about potential services that can help you create the best version of yourself. See you next time.